Picture this, a night in the Negev desert, sometime in the early 1980s. The sky is clear, thick with stars. In the darkness, floodlights pick out a strange, isolated complex. Domes, cooling towers, fenced-off buildings, guarded gates. Officially, it is just a research center. Unofficially, every serious intelligence agency on Earth knows its name. Dimona. If you could look down from space the way American satellites did, you would see a reactor dome, auxiliary buildings, and the telltale signs of a sophisticated nuclear complex. Analysts in Langley and at the Pentagon have been watching this place for years, measuring shadows, estimating reactor power, calculating how much plutonium it could produce. They know, in strict confidence, what it means. Israel is a nuclear power. On the ground, one of the many people going in and out of that complex is a technician, not a senior scientist, not a general, just a mid-level worker from a modest background doing the night shift in the reprocessing plant. His name is Mordechai Vanunu. He swipes his badge at the gate. He puts his lunch bag on the conveyor belt to be checked. Inside that bag, next to the sandwiches, is a cheap camera. By the time he leaves, the fate of Israel's most carefully guarded secret will have turned. To understand how a man like Vanunu ends up at the center of a global nuclear storm, you have to go back to Marrakesh in the 1950s. He is born in 1954 into a large Moroccan Jewish family. In the early 1960s, as part of a broader wave of North African Jewish migration, his parents moved the family to Israel. They settled in Beersheba, a dusty, growing town on the edge of the Negev. Like most young Israeli men, Vanunu serves in the army. After his service, he takes whatever work he can find, and in 1976, he lands a job with the Israel Atomic Energy Commission. He is assigned to the Negev Nuclear Research Center near the town of Dimona. The facility is shrouded in secrecy. From the road, it is just another fenced compound in the desert. On official maps for years, the area was blank. Publicly, Israeli leaders say little more than a standard phrase: Israel will not be the first to introduce nuclear weapons into the Middle East. It is a carefully crafted ambiguity designed to leave adversaries guessing and friends reassured. Inside Dimona, Vanunu learns what that really means. He works in Mahon 2, an underground reprocessing plant where irradiated fuel rods from the reactor are chemically processed to extract plutonium. His job is technical, repetitive, and dangerous, monitoring equipment, dealing with contaminants, working odd hours. Over nearly 9 years, he becomes deeply familiar with the plant's layout, its processes, and its rhythm. At the same time, his view of the world is changing. Vanunu watches the Lebanon War unfold, sees the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza harden, and feels alienated from the nationalist narrative he grew up in. He starts arguing about politics at work, sympathizing with Palestinians, and getting involved in mild union activity. Supervisors notice. He gets a reputation as difficult. In 1985, as part of cost-cutting and security tightening, Dimona management lays off dozens of workers. He is among them. On paper, his story could have ended there, a fired technician leaving a secret job and starting over. It doesn't, because before he walks out, he decides to do one more thing. He smuggles in a camera. Security at Dimona is strict, but like any system, it has gaps. Vanunu hides a simple pocket camera in his lunch bag. Over a period of days, he moves through the plant as he always has, but now he lingers slightly longer in key areas. He takes 57 photographs, rolls of stainless steel glove boxes where workers handle plutonium, huge underground halls, the inside of the reactor complex. From a technical perspective, these images are gold. They show not just that Israel has a reactor, but how that reactor is integrated into an industrial-scale weapons program. From an American analyst's perspective, the photos, combined with measured reactor power, allow you to do clear math. How much plutonium per year, multiplied by how many years equals roughly how many warheads. That is the kind of calculation U.S. intelligence has been making from space and signals alone. Now, an Israeli technician is about to give the public enough data to do it too. After his dismissal, he leaves Israel. He travels through Asia, drifts, tries to figure out what to do next. Eventually, he ends up in Sydney, Australia, working as a taxi driver and odd-job laborer. There, he starts attending an Anglican church, befriends clergy, and converts to Christianity, taking the baptismal name John Crossman. He also starts talking. At first, it is just hints to friends that he used to work at a secret nuclear site, that Israel has far more bombs than anyone knows. One of those friends is connected to a British journalist. A message goes out. There is a man in Sydney claiming to have worked at Dimona and to have photos. In London, that message lands at the Sunday Times. The foreign desk is skeptical. Israel's nuclear program has been an open secret in intelligence circles for years, but this is something else, a potential insider offering not rumor but pictures. They fly Vanunu to London. In a safe flat, far from prying eyes, reporter Peter Hounham and a team of editors sit him down. For days, they listen. He sketches the underground plant. He names building numbers, describes the shifts, explains which processing lines are for plutonium, which are for lithium-6 and tritium. The paper brings in outside experts, including former Manhattan Project physicist Frank Barnaby and other nuclear scientists. They cross-examine him. They ask, how many fuel rods per year? What's the burn-up? What's the reprocessing throughput? He answers in detail. They compare his recollections to reactor physics and to what they can see from commercial satellite photos. It all lines up. The experts conclude that Vanunu is genuine and that his data imply that Israel has produced enough plutonium for at least 100, possibly up to 200 nuclear warheads by the mid-1980s. In other words, in pure nuclear terms, Israel is sitting roughly where Britain and France sat, a second-tier but serious nuclear power. The Sunday Times prepares a blockbuster. They work carefully. They want to get every technical detail right. They also know that once they publish, there is no going back. They are not the only ones paying attention. Somewhere between Sydney and London, Israeli security services have picked up a signal. Maybe it is a phone call. Maybe it is travel data. Maybe it is a small human leak. In any case, Shin Bet and Mossad become aware that a former Dimona worker has disappeared abroad and is in contact with foreign media. To them, Vanunu is not a whistleblower. He is a security emergency. Israel's policy of nuclear ambiguity is not just a slogan. It is a carefully constructed pillar of deterrence and diplomacy. Everyone important knows Israel has nuclear weapons, but because there is no public acknowledgement, Arab states and the Soviet Union can live with it without losing face, and Washington can avoid triggering legal headaches under non-proliferation law. If a Sunday newspaper splashes detailed photos and expert estimates across its front page, that pillar is at risk. Mossad is told, find him, bring him home, alive, fast. They do what a small, agile service does best. They profile the target. What motivates him? What frightens him? What tempts him? They conclude that Vanunu, now alone, religiously searching, and politically isolated, is susceptible to attention and affection, especially from women. They choose an operative, a woman who had grown up partly in the United States, spoke fluent English with an American accent, and could pass as a free-spirited tourist. Her name in Israeli files is Cheryl Ben Tov. Her operational alias will be Cindy. They send her to London. She engineers a chance encounter. They meet in Leicester Square in the neon and noise. She tells him she is an American beautician, traveling, curious about the world. He is flattered. A friendship, quickly tinged with romance, develops. She plays the part perfectly, sympathetic, a little rebellious, interested in his story, but not too probing. After a short time, she suggests a weekend away in Rome. Italy, she says, is beautiful. They can relax, escape the gray London autumn. The choice of Rome is not random. Mossad planners know that snatching someone off British streets would provoke a serious diplomatic crisis with a key ally. Operating in Italy, especially with the cooperation or blind eye of some local officials, gives them more room to maneuver. Tickets are bought. On September 30th, 1986, Vanunu and Cindy board British Airways Flight 504 to Rome. At Fiumicino, they clear passport control as tourists. They take a taxi into the city. She leads him to an apartment near Via Venta, rented in advance by Mossad under a false name. When the door closes behind them, the game ends. As he later recounts, 3 men burst from the shadows. They grapple him to the floor. A needle goes into his arm. Darkness. He awakes intermittently, bound, drugged in a small cabin. He hears the muffled thrum of engines. He smells salt. Only later does he learn that he is aboard an Israeli Navy vessel, the INS Noga, or possibly another auxiliary, waiting in international waters off Italy. The ship sails for Haifa. There is no extradition hearing, no Italian judge, no public arrest. It is an old-fashioned kidnapping executed with Cold War precision. Meanwhile, in London, the Sunday Times is days away from publication. They have lost contact with Vanunu. They do not know where he is. They decide to go ahead. On October 5, 1986, their front page carries the headline, "Revealed: The Secrets of Israel's Nuclear Arsenal." Inside, spread across multiple pages, are Vanunu's photographs and diagrams, alongside expert analysis explaining what they show. Rows of advanced plutonium separation lines, the scale of operations, evidence of work on boosted fission devices and possibly thermonuclear components. The conclusion? Israel has been producing enough plutonium to build 10 to 12 warheads a year since the late 1960s, probably giving it an arsenal in the low hundreds by the mid-1980s. For the global public, it is a shock. For American nuclear strategists, it is confirmation. They had already assessed, from satellite imagery and other sources, that Israel had crossed the nuclear threshold in the late 1960s, with the Dimona reactor likely producing 20 to 40 megawatts of power. With Vanunu's interior photos, independent experts doing back-of-the-envelope calculations reach the same conclusion as classified U.S. estimates. It is a moment where open journalism, simple technology, and high-end intelligence analysis converge. Back in Israel, Vanunu is delivered into the hands of Shin Bet. For several weeks, his whereabouts are not publicly acknowledged. He is interrogated, kept in strict isolation. Israel's press is gagged by military censors. Then, during a routine transfer to court, he pulls one of the most remarkable small acts of communication in espionage history. Knowing that photographers will be waiting outside, he writes a message on his palm with a pen. Vanunu M was hijacked in Rome, ITL 30.9.86, 21 o'clock. Came to Rome by BA Fly 504. As he is hustled from the van, hands cuffed together, he presses his palm against the window glass, fingers splayed so that cameras can capture the writing. Later, when the images are developed and enlarged, journalists read his message. In a single frame, he confirms the kidnapping, the city, the date, and the flight number. It is a reminder that for all the satellites and signals, a ballpoint pen and a good memory are still powerful tools. The trial that follows in 1987 and 1988 is mostly secret. The courtroom is closed for almost all testimony. Foreign journalists sit outside, catching only glimpses of the proceedings. The charges are severe: aggravated espionage, disclosing state secrets with intent to harm national security, assisting the enemy during wartime. Vanunu's defense is not legalistic. He does not deny what he has done. He frames it as a moral act. He says that Israel's nuclear program, developed in secret and never subjected to public or parliamentary debate, is dangerous and hypocritical. He argues that Israelis and their neighbors have a right to know that a Middle Eastern nuclear arms race is real. The judges are unmoved. In March 1988, they convict him and sentence him to 18 years in prison, just short of the 20-year maximum, noting his detailed disclosures and the potential harm they could cause. For 11 of those 18 years, he is held in almost total solitary confinement. A small cell, no radio, no newspapers, 1 hour a day in a tiny yard. Human rights groups call it psychological torture by isolation. The Israeli state calls it necessary. As years pass, Vanunu's name becomes a rallying cry for nuclear disarmament activists in Europe, the US, and Japan. He is nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by supporters in Europe. His image, eyes as wide as the ones in his palm message, appears on posters. Inside Israel, opinion is split. Some see him as a traitor, others as a warning sign about secrecy and conscience. Through it all, Israel maintains its official line. It neither confirms nor denies possessing nuclear weapons. It repeats its formula about not introducing nuclear weapons to the region. It quietly accepts that every serious analyst now knows what Dimona really is, but it does not endorse that knowledge with a political statement. That difference matters in diplomacy. For American viewers, there is a revealing duality here. On one level, the Vanunu affair shows how advanced nuclear technology can be built and hidden by a small ally under the umbrella of American power. The Dimona reactor itself was built with French assistance, but Israel's ability to integrate it into a sophisticated weapons program depended on a broader ecosystem, access to Western electronics, computing, metallurgy, and scientific training, all fields where the United States led and where Israel plugged in. On another level, Vanunu's revelations highlight how closely American assessments had tracked reality. Long before the Sunday Times story, U.S. satellites had photographed Dimona's cooling towers and domes. Signals intelligence had picked up patterns of activity consistent with weapons work. American analysts had briefed presidents that Israel possessed nuclear weapons. When the photos hit newsstands, it was not American intelligence that was surprised. It was the rest of the world catching up. In Moscow and in Arab capitals, the confirmation reinforced a point they already feared, that their regional adversary was backed not just by American diplomacy and conventional arms, but by a hidden nuclear capability that American technology had identified and factored into strategy long before a technician with a camera stepped forward. Then, there is the Mossad operation itself. It shows in miniature how a smaller intelligence service can use classic tradecraft to achieve results that no satellite or supercomputer can. The CIA could track airlines and intercept conversations. The NSA could monitor calls. But neither of them is going to lure an Israeli citizen onto a plane with a fake romance and inject him in a Rome apartment. That's a different skill set. Profiling, legend building, human manipulation, audacious extraterritorial action. Vanunu's story, told to an American audience, sits at the intersection of two kinds of power. On one axis, the industrial, scientific, and intelligence power that lets a democracy like the United States build the first nuclear weapons, deploy spy satellites, and map the secret facilities of friend and foe alike. On the other axis, the human scale. One technician with a camera, one deep cover agent with charisma, one newscaper with ink and printing presses, that can, for better or worse, punch holes in secrecy. When Israelis read about Vanunu, many see a traitor who risked their security. When Arabs read about him, many see confirmation that their worst suspicions were right. When Soviets read about him, they see a small ally of Washington fielding capabilities that Moscow had to expend enormous resources to match. And when Americans read about him, there is room for a different emotion, a recognition that your country's early technological leaps, the Manhattan Project, spy satellites, signals intelligence, created a world where allies like Israel could develop sophisticated capabilities under your umbrella. Your analysts had already mapped that world accurately. Your public, however, lived in a slightly different world, one where certain things were known but not said. It took someone like Vanunu to close that gap between what only the most advanced intelligence services knew and what everyone could see. In a sense, his camera did to Israel's nuclear secret what early American reconnaissance did to the Soviet Union's. It took what was hidden and made it measurable. It made denial harder. It forced a new level of honesty, if not in official statements, then in global understanding. As you tell this story on your channel, you can frame it as a Cold War-era triangle between technology, secrecy, and conscience. A reactor in the desert, built with advanced know-how and guarded by one of the most aggressive intelligence services in the world. A single technician who decides that this is too important to keep hidden and uses the simplest of tools to reveal it. An operation by that intelligence service to reverse his act, using classic spycraft rather than high-tech, while the world's most advanced satellites and codebreakers watch from above, already knowing how the story ends. The Soviet Union never had an ally like that. It never had the underlying scientific ecosystem that allowed quiet nuclear revolutions in friendly states. It never built a public sphere where, decades later, you can sit at home, open an app, and watch a video calmly dissecting how one man with a camera showed the world what American analysts had known all along. You do. And somewhere between the floodlights at Dimona, the flashes of cameras in London, and the starlight over a Navy ship in the Mediterranean, that's the vantage point your viewers will be watching from.